There are 168 hours in a week. We go to church for 1 hour. What about the other 167?
Cue this podcast. We're here to bring the church to you the rest of the week. I'm David Vogel, the Director of Communication here at Central Community Church.
I'm Cori Broddle, the Director of Community. We've been to the 1 hour in church. Now welcome to the other 167.
This summer on 167, we're doing something a little different. Normally, all of our episodes they're different. They're different guests talking about different subjects. But for the next 7 weeks, we are going to be very intentional with what we're doing. And we're going to talk about something that's very important to our church, and that is our church core values.
Yeah, so for the next 7 weeks, we're going to go through each of our core values. And our core values go off of the word central. So we have community, excellence, nurturing, truth, reconciliation, authenticity, and leadership. So today we're going to start with community.
There you go.
Pastor Aaron, define community.
Yeah, it's exciting for me that we're doing this. We did this with our staff not too long ago, and each of our what we call staff huddles, we talked about our core values in each one. And each one of our core values has kind of a catchphrase behind it. And so community is doing life together. So the interesting thing for me is obviously with central community, this is kind of the foundational one for me, in that we're all about doing life together. There's an interesting part about it where I don't necessarily think that we do community the best here in the United States, to be quite frank with you. There's some books that you can read about this, and I'm not even going to quote who they are or anything, but it says that we've moved from a front porch culture to a back porch culture. What I mean by that is in neighborhoods, it used to be everyone was on the front porch, would wave to people as they went by, would have conversations. A lot of the conversations happen on the front porch. We've moved from the front porch to back porch, where we have our privacy fences up, and we like to do things by ourselves, or we like to do things as a family, which is not a bad thing, but we've neglected doing things together as a community. We do these one-off things, but doing life together is completely different than just doing tasks together.
And I think some of the scriptures that we've based these off for community is Genesis 2:18, which is when God said it's not good for man to be alone. And that's
He made us for community.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really modeled off of the Trinity as well. You can't have God as God the Father separate from God the Son and God the Holy Spirit. We can talk about those separately. We can talk about Father as creator. We can talk about Jesus as the one being on the cross. We can talk about the Holy Spirit in Acts 2. But when you talk about those separately, you have to still understand that they are one together. And so that community, that common unity is almost what I break it down in. It's community. It's a common unity. It's deciding that there's going to be one thing in common that we unify around. For us here at Central Community, that is Jesus Christ, the person and teaching of Jesus Christ. That's what we want to have as our common unity, our community, and doing life together around Him is what's important for us.
Yeah.
So how do you think, so you're talking about that back porch.
Yeah.
How do we make that transition? How do we, just even starting in our neighborhoods, how do we start with having that community?
So it's, in my opinion, it's super difficult. One of the things is we have to get outside of our comfort zones. And
sometimes we have to get out of the house.
Yeah, there you go.
Absolutely.
On the back porch most of the
Absolutely.
time.
Yeah.
What we have to identify is what it's not. Community is not social media.
Oh.
Okay. I don't think that you can do media and community in the same sentence and do it well.
I'm going to tweet that real quick.
Media happens. There's a gap between me and somebody else. Even the people that are watching this podcast or listening to it right now, they can feel a part of something, but there's not necessarily that community that's happening, because there's something about the face-to-face that brings us together even more. I believe that's why God sent Jesus. There's something there that when we have that face-to-face, that interaction, that we can't do community without that. In an authentic way. So identifying what it's not is helpful for identifying how to do what it is. For me, it really goes, okay, I've got to think outside of myself. And that's hard for me to do because we live in an individualistic society where it's all about me. And there's a famous country song back in the day. I want to talk about me. I want to talk about I.
Sing it. I want to hear it. Go ahead.
Do you not know this song?
I do.
Oh,
I do.
man. Country.
all right.
I'm sorry.
David could sing it.
I'm not singing it.
Anyway, I digress. The whole thing is we are a very individualistic society.
Yeah.
When you look around the world, a lot of societies are event-based and not time-based. Okay? So follow me here for just a second. What I mean by that is you have an event and it's a birthday party. Well, we're going to a birthday party. Here in the United States, we want to know when does the birthday party start and how long will it last, because I'm going to have something afterwards.
Right.
It's got to start and an end time. When you go to a lot of other places, there's a birthday party and that is the event. It doesn't matter how long it lasts. You think about Jesus' first miracle. It was around a wedding feast. And they said, after they had already drank all the wine, and these were day-long celebrations.
Yeah.
So when he says after they had drank everything, that means that they had been there for a long time celebrating together. We don't allow ourselves to stay with one another long enough for us to get to that place where we run out of things.
Yeah.
Because we have that end to it, and now it's move on to the next thing.
Now, you actually remind me, so that's a very time-based, even the wedding was probably timed.
Yeah.
But think back when, like, our grandparents or great-grandparents, they used to cook meals or have a pastry dish or dessert sitting around waiting for company, because you would just stop by. You wouldn't call, you wouldn't text, you wouldn't email or send out an invite. People would just stop by so they could have that fellowship.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of community, and also the hard part about community. We don't like interruptions.
No, when somebody comes to my door, I check the app on my phone to look at the Ring app to see who's there and if I really want to talk to them.
Right, exactly. And 9 times out of 10, it's probably not one of your friends that's just stopping by, because we've trained ourselves to text somebody before. We've trained ourselves to have our space in between us. But one of the most beautiful times that I've had with friends is when they've just stopped by and said, hey, I was in the neighborhood, and you just have that that time together. Yeah. The important part for me, when Nicole and I lived in Germany and we experienced life there and were a part of missions there, they told us it wasn't so much about what you did, but who you did it with. Okay. And so it was kind of like, hey, you're going to the grocery store. Well, bring your neighbor along with you. And if you're going to have a cup of coffee, bring your neighbor along with you. It was one of these things that you weren't supposed to do life by yourself. Yeah. And so you were always supposed to be bringing someone along. You read the scriptures. That's what Jesus did all the time. Hey, let's go have dinner. Let's go have something to drink. Let's go be a part of something. Let's go heal. But it was always bringing someone along to do life together with.
And
go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to jump back a little bit. You mentioned social media and how that's not real community, but for almost a year, that's how we did community. And I think we learned really quickly that it's not the same. Going to church on Facebook, you can chat with people and it's still important, but there's something about being in the building with other believers sitting next to you that you can't have.
Yeah, and that's this thing. There is something beautiful about having the internet and having the capabilities that we have right now. But there's a difference between a can and will and a can't and won't. And there's can I mingle with people? Can I face-to-face do things with people? If I can, then I should.
Right.
Now, the problem is there's a lot of times when we go, I can, but I won't.
Right.
So we have to be willing. If we can, we have to be willing to take that step and do it.
Right.
It's so much easier to do life apart. It's so much easier to do these things by ourselves. It's so much easier to be back in our privacy fence. But this can and will needs to kind of guide our lives when it comes to community.
I think that's what Hebrews 10:24-25 is. Don't get in the habit of not gathering together as others have, but do it more frequently, I think is what it goes on to say. That's a really beautiful verse that speaks to this really well.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I don't mean to harp on media and stuff like that, but the more that we've gone along in this world, the more I remember when I was in college, and again, this is probably going to date me too much, but graduated high school in 2000.
Yeah, you're old.
When I know,
Watch it.
Right? We've got to stick together here. We're around the same age. When I went to college, I remember that my dorm room was the only one that had a DVD player at that time. Like, I got a DVD player for Christmas because I was like, man, I want to have that where people come to my dorm room and we watch DVDs together. So I'm sorry I said Christmas, but I got it for a graduation present.
Okay.
So people started coming to our room to watch movies together. Well, that Christmas, every single person on my floor got their own DVD player, and they became separated where everyone watched their own thing in their dorm room. And it was so fascinating to see this, because now we went from this where everything was in one place and we shared together. Now everyone has it themselves. Yeah. Fast forward to, okay, now we've got laptops. We take it with us where we go. We've got our cell phones, so we don't even need a centralized TV that all of us join around. We all watch our own thing on Netflix because we've got 7 accounts for one family. It's this interesting thing of, it's almost freed us up to do a lot of things, but it's divided us and keeping us from doing community together.
I even think about the people who were quarantined and having to work from home. How many businesses have decided to keep working from home? Yeah. And so now they're very individualized and at home by themselves working. They don't have that community.
You have to make an effort to find community in a lot of places.
Yeah. Now, let me say, where a lot of times you experience community, you can be less efficient. Okay. I mean, to be honest with you, I'm more efficient when I'm able to be secluded and do things myself, work from home. For instance, a lot of these companies have said we can be more efficient and effective if we're minimizing costs by not having the offices and everybody's in their own workplace. Right. But efficiency and community don't always go hand in hand. Vulnerability comes along with community, and vulnerability is not always efficient. And so it's countercultural almost to what we're taught. Now, what I've seen coming out of COVID and everything was people are longing for community, but to make that next step, to be vulnerable enough to get in the place to actually do community, do life together, is a very difficult thing.
So let's talk about, what does Central Community offer?
That's a really good segue to how we can find community.
So what do we have here at Central Community?
We've got a lot of different things, in my opinion. So obviously our worship services, if you're not able to be here in person, watching online is great. And being able to, especially in the summer months when you're traveling, we've talked about taking Central with you digitally. That's super awesome. The goal would be for you to experience community however you can. But again, that can and that will need to align. Okay. So if you can do something in person, I would encourage people to actually do that, to get out of the comfort zone and do it. If you can't, physically can't, if timing says you can't, then get into something that you can. So watching online or being a part of our 9 o'clock or 11 o'clock services. I would say a life group. You know, Cori and I are in the same life group with our spouses, and we love our life group and dissecting a little bit, not just about the sermon, but also what's going on in life and praying with one another. And that has been a great source of nurture for our family and going through things, to doing life together, not just transactions, but relationships has been key. So that for me is the biggest thing, is the life group. Another thing is just show up early to church.
We have really good cinnamon rolls.
True story. Cinnamon rolls are on point. And that's what I would say.
And free coffee. The coffee is free.
That's right.
And guess what? So is water. I mean, you can go to I guess COVID's now kind of getting over it. Water fountains have been shut down. But the thing of showing up early to church, as awkward as that sounds and maybe feels because there's not a program, just going and having a cup of coffee or getting a juice from the cafe, having a cinnamon roll or breakfast burrito, just sharing a table together is so super important. I mean, read the scriptures, and all the time Jesus shared the table together with people. I was reading this book that recently and it talked about Jesus came for three things. It says in scriptures that the reason why Jesus came, or Jesus came to the earth to do something, and one was seek and save that which was lost. One says Jesus did not come to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. Those are two of the ones that we talk about all the time. The third thing that this author said was the one that we don't talk about so much was Jesus came eating and drinking. So the first two talk about why he came. He came to seek that which was lost. He came to give his life as a ransom for many. The third thing says how he came, and he came eating and drinking. He came sharing the table with sinners, with people. He came in community. And so that, I think, would be an interesting point to say that's how you can do it at Central. Come early. Just be among people at the cafe, sharing a table.
Yeah, of course, we also have Sunday school classes. We have men's and women's studies. And if you physically cannot come to the building, we've got our online community, which is our private Facebook group where there's a lot of people sharing prayer requests or praises or just sharing the events of life.
And that's how you can have community in between seeing each other. We're not saying that replaces it. That's the in-between. It's like you said, sharing a prayer request when you really need it. And that's how we can build community.
Yeah, that definitely should be the launching point for sure, because what Paul did was he wrote letters to the churches in different places, and that was still that relationship part, but it was always that longing to be in the presence of someone else. And so that what we have with social media and the church Facebook page and stuff is that letter writing that we get to do back and forth with people in the church, longing for that time when we're back together, just as Paul did in that scripture.
Good.
That's good. So, we talked about life groups briefly, so I'm going to put a little plug in.
Oh, commercial time.
Yes, commercial time. August 1st, we're going to have a meet and greet here at the church in the Chapel Gardens at 10:15 to 11. So if you're not in a life group,
is that AM or PM, Cori?
That is AM. Okay. Man, I'm in bed by then at night. Yes. So it's just in between church services on Sunday in the Chapel Gardens. But come meet new people, find the people that you connect with, and we can make you a life group. So really excited about that event.
And I would say, as you're listening to this, ask yourself two questions. Can I get to that place? And then will I? So can you be there that date? Tell us the date again.
August 1st.
August 1st. The time is in between services, so 10:15-ish.
10:15 to 11.
All right, 10:15 to 11. So ask yourself two questions. Can I physically get there? And then the next question is, will I? Will I cross that barrier so that I'm not living in my privatized backyard, but will I be that front porch culture person here at the church?
That's great.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're looking forward to diving into these 7 core values. So
that's one. That's the first one right there.
Number 1. So we will see you guys next week as we talk about excellence.
Great.
Thanks for listening to 167. Please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you're listening from.
And to keep up with everything at Central Community Church, follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And if you want to watch us record this podcast live, find us on YouTube.
We think the 167 hours between church services are so important, and we hope you'll share this episode with your friends. Join us next week.